That was brilliant.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rant, but there's a lot in there, you know.
What I could not agree more with you, and I could not agree more with what Camilla gives in her talks. What I take away as an absolute key sentence of what you said is egalitarianism evolved through babies, through collective caring. And that my experience of living with a Benjele for 3 years and being initiated into the Benjele women's knowledge of Ngoku, what it is to be a woman and how to conduct yourself as a woman, is exactly that. Women ritually and continuously and cyclically will hold up the mirror. And they hold up that mirror to the male collective body and to male society very, very, very explicitly. By becoming this female collective body, women actually group together. They link arms, hands, legs, and they stomp together through the camp as one. So it's not women dancing singularly, but actually making lines and groups and balls like bees. Real big balls, and they run manically through the camp. And they sing one particular song very, very loudly, and that is one woman, one penis. And that puzzled me to start with. What does that mean? Right? They will explicitly enact male sexual behavior. They will explicitly insult male sexual behavior. But doing that in a very mocking way to enchant men back into a good type of behavior. What it is to really raise a society of equals where babies, the next generation, is being cared for properly. So not one male can come in and impregnate all these women. It's one penis where one woman, or not one penis with lots and lots of women.
It's anti-alpha male.
It really is anti-alpha male. So explicitly, so hilariously funny as well. So when I ask the men, don't you find that insulting? Because they sing really quite insulting songs, like the penis is like, they call it Dumdume. Can't quite remember the word, but there is a caterpillar, and that caterpillar that walks in the forest is blind, and it stumbles and bangs into things, and they say that a male penis is just like this blind millipede, not caterpillar, this blind millipede stumbling and collapses before it even gets in there. So they really insult men. And I sat with the men and I asked, doesn't that insult you? And they said, yeah. I said, but why don't you do anything about, why wouldn't you react? I said, because it's so nice. It is desirable. So at the basis of life lies sexual reproduction. There is no life without sex, and only right sex can really lead to right behavior. So women bring morality as a whole body by all the time holding up that mirror and sharing their values very explicitly with men. In a way, it is like they pollinate men regularly, and especially also young boys, with these ideas. What is permissible behavior and what is non-permissible behavior? So just having attended a salon on what is culture and how does culture shape our values, and how do our values shape our culture, and how is our culture now, what can we do in order to get out of the mess that we are in with this consumerism and capitalism. And it really made me think very deeply, and I thought, yes, at the basis of all of this we think about handing down culture to the next generation every time. But we see generations often, here we are as adults, however, 20-something, and then we see the next generation of adults. But before there is a next generation, there are babies. And unless we have a cooperation between males and females, that won't work. And the women reinforce that time and again pollinating these ideas and sharing these ideas with men. Now, it's not unusual that men straight after Ngoku, which is this female corporate dance, will do sho, or will do another male dance to also show their masculinity, to show women how desirable that is, and women love it. It's wonderful, and men love it to be insulted like that, but to be shown this raw, amazing, really desirable sexuality, because that's the fabric of life, is that sexual reproduction. And that can only be giving a good life if that is shared really appropriately. So I really love that comment of yours, and how visceral that it's not in the brain.
Not at all, not at all.
No, it's not in the prefrontal neocortex. No.
Dorsolateral.
Yes.
Prefrontal cortex. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's in the gut. It's in that area. And what's really amazing is the fact that that's recognized so strongly through Nom and Aquila.
Yeah.
That, your power is here. That's just really earthing everything down and teaching kids. I love this practice of weaving children into this collective body and a sense of themselves as collective and being able to flow outwards, but also locating the responsibility for that power in them. You're part of this, you experience it, you thrive on it, but you're responsible for it. It's absolutely yours. And that's human sociality, really, in its kind of finest, crispest form. And so it makes me mad when I come across references to simple egalitarianism versus complex hierarchy. Think, duh. I mean, really, there's nothing simple here. It's extraordinarily complex.
It's incredibly sophisticated.
It's thinking through the gut, thinking through the viscera, but also exploding that out into a cultural, danced, lived society. So it's wonderful.
I mean, that's it. In Neolithic society, everything is being shared through being this, right? Through, you can't in a sort of agricultural society, the mind is being instructed. So you are being told, this is not right, and this is moral behavior, and that is how you have to do it, and that is how whole society you have to do it. When you're that old, you have to do this. When you're that, Benjeli would never ever dream of doing that, to go to anybody and say, this is wrong, and this is right moral behavior, and this is how you do it. You, to point to somebody, that would be outrageous. Who are you? But what you can do is to enchant people into, look how nice it is to be like that. That's what women do. They say, look how nice we are. Aren't we sexy? Aren't we? They beautify themselves. Aren't we really, really, really incredibly desirable? And men go, yes, yes, you are really, really, really desirable. Men do the same. So it's really by enticing people into, isn't it nice to be just together and share properly? Yeah. Rather than instruct. So it isn't the prefrontal neocortex. I can't wait for your talk next Tuesday, Camilla, to deconstruct that even further. Because they just embody that. It isn't that things can't be shared. There was a new song that popped up that I had never heard in all the 22 years going and living with a Benjela, in intervals. And that was a song about a man whose wife had been pregnant, and he went to go and be with another wife. So it wasn't a song that said he was bad and this is bad behavior. It was a song just to make everybody know there's a man, his wife was pregnant, and he went to another woman. And they sang it with such joy, running up and continually up and down the camp. So everybody knew that's what he had done. It was just out in the open. Yeah. So it was simply just, and now it's up to you what you make of it. Yeah. It's not saying, oh, that was so bad, and his poor wife cried, and he shouldn't have. No, it was just that's what happened.
Yeah, that's absolutely, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. And everyone experienced the shame and what he'd done, and you don't have to be lectured.
Yes. You just feel it. And I guess that is it. At the basis of all of that is trust. Camilla says that very, very beautifully, I hope on Tuesday, about when did it become advantageous that we could see each other's eyes going somewhere? in evolutionary terms, that we could really share intent. I'm looking there, not for, I'm looking there and you shouldn't see that lovely banana I now want to have. I want you to see what I'm seeing. How did that come? You will talk about that on Tuesday? Wonderful, so I'll just shut up here.
Should I just say a few things?
Well, do you want to come up then, Camilla? Because it needs to be on the... If you're going to do it, it needs to be on record.
Yeah.
Ingrid, give Camilla your...
Yes.
funny thing.
Come.
I've got it.
Go on. Why not?
That's so brilliant.
Can I go through?
Yes. And I assure you would love it too. If you would go to the Benjeli, I mean, I have the experience not with the people that practice Nom, but with Ekila, you would feel it. It's not something you do through your brain, it's something that you really do through being. It makes you be different in the world. Experience that day.
Thank you. There's so many beautiful, wise things being said here from Morna and from Ingrid. The idea that, in some sense, babies are shaping and creating morality is, I think, a wonderful idea that comes immediately out of Sarah Hrdy's work, and this is, you're making it very palpable is one way to say it. I'm also struck by what you said of the understanding of that women do not practice going into and trance when they're in reproductive years, with this notion that they have anyway from through their menstrual cycle and reproductive power. Men somehow need to be inculcated and educated in that, and it strikes me that there is a perspective on evolution that maybe I'll try and develop a bit more next week, that it has probably been said before that fundamentally human males have been, compared to great ape ancestry, have been really feminized. Feminized in terms of the ability to, feminized in terms of intersubjectivity and the cooperative eyes, and being able to look another person in the eye and understand what they're thinking about. Almost surely that starts with cooperative breeding, cooperative childcare coalitions, within which men will become first sort of orbiting and peripheral, but being drawn into by being born into those coalitions as male children, of course, and actually brothers in relationships may be very significant in developing, in domestication in that sense. So there is an aspect of feminizing. It's something which for amongst primates, female social capacities and empathies would be, if we think of bonobos and so on, would be there first. The female social brain, as such, is usually these days given priority, and men are being pulled into that through all kinds of mechanisms that Sarah Hrdy records in terms of hormonal mechanisms, oxytocin, and so forth. Amazing. Yes, but this is also what you're suggesting here, is that to actually really get to that depth of the empathy of the solar plexus, the feeling of what is another person's sense, all the work of healing, all the work of the shaking and so forth that's going on with the trance experience. This is something that the men are kind of being led to and being inculcated in. And it's as if women kind of have it anyway, and it's being drawn out and raised in men. So it's again as if it's a kind of feminization in some way.
I was struck. Chris Lowe's paper, where he describes the experience of trance, which is similar to this kind of what they're talking about in the healing dance.
Yes.
And it was really, he listed all the physical qualities that I would have associated with labour. you know, pain in the lower, intense pain in the lower spine, the legs are shaking.
Right, yes.
Pain here, the sense of heat or fullness building here, something that needs to be expelled. And I just, that just reminded me of labour, the whole discussion. But actually, you have, it's like there are two layers to this. There is the pure experience of energy that is accessible to everyone, and it's something that's being used for the community. And then there's also, I think, that aspect of male sharing and reproductivity. They're physically experiencing, you know, so much that's to do with labour and childbirth, and that's where the power of the healing comes. So it's very interesting.
Yes.
I've heard from an anthropologist, a Venezuelan anthropologist, that again it's you know, culture is shaped by our values, that men very much share into this process, and it is just a common acceptance that men can have pregnancy symptoms when their wives are being pregnant, so they often suffer backache and other, you know, pregnancy symptoms, because it's accepted in that culture that that is so. And so it is so. Very interesting.
And also the Hurdy book, where she talks about the more men are holding babies,
it changes the whole hormone,
estrogen levels, the whole hormonal makeup of the
signature is changed.
And so it's brilliant. The more you hold these beautiful kind of non-privatized babies, the more your own body responds to them, and the more you're primed to hold them and to enjoy holding them. It's just so much going on even under the surface of what we can analyse or rationalise, and that's, I think, what makes this really visceral. You have to bring that quality in, because
Shall we open up a bit so that anyone's got questions or contributions to make? Chris?
Yeah, just a quick question. Morna, can you tell us again the title of that, what you were reading from?
Healing Makes Our Hearts Happy.
Thank you.
It's Vegan Bisoli
and Richard Katz.
It's Katz Bisoli St. Denis. So Katz, Richard Katz is first author, and Bisoli.
Boiling Energy is great.
Yeah, so it's the follow-up to Boiling Energy. Boiling Energy is the original, but this has been an extension.
Greatest thing ever written on trance, really. Probably Boiling Energy.
There are schools of thought about it, because the Keynesian and Keynesian Low they emphasise. It's worth mentioning this here, because I'm thinking of Bakhtin and Morna's beautiful use of Bakhtin's theory. And of course, when you think of Bakhtin, it's the grotesque, which is his watchword. But we are also talking about the beauty, and we were this morning as well with Ellie in the PhD Viva, all the beauty of the women and their sensuous beauty in creating their mockery of the men and their laughter. But what Bakhtin means, what the grotesque means, is specifically, we have the idea that it's necessarily ugly or necessarily, but actually it's about the ability to transform. It's about it's not being fixed. It's about it's about this constant transformation and openness and flow. There are no boundaries. There's no fixity. So that idea of what is actually happening in what's being called trance, this state of enhanced awareness that we're talking about, the men's experience with the Jeune Classe and many other Bushman groups. It's about this state of complete shaking non-fixity, where people are re-engaging with this state called this, what is it? way of being, let's say, called first creation, where they're returning.
Chaos.
They're returning. It's chaos which is not static. It's everything that Morna was saying. It's not static, but it is the re-envisaging and reconceptualizing of morality, of order, that is a disorder. That is, it's not order being fixed. It's everything potentially changing. So the girl in her menstrual hut is changing to an animal and is changing to a hunter, and everybody must change with her, and if they don't, then there will be terror, then there will be grave consequences. So transformation, the grotesque is this transformation and constant change, and lack of fixity, which is what's happening with
the body's crevices and openings and
yes,
holes are so important for Bakhtin.
That's it. It's the not the no boundaries. Yes.
If the body, when it's open, through it's all the different orifices that the body has, is when it becomes the collective body, the laughing body.
That's it.
And of course, laughter is
loud, out loud. Yes.
Of course, the vagina opens in all kinds of ways, and so does the anus and all these things. But Bakhtin just loves all that stuff.
Yes.
To show how the body can speak through all the different openings that our bodies have. So, right, that was Chris' question answered. Yes.
I was just wondering, because when you were talking about the example with the man who was with one woman and then he went to another woman, I was wondering though, in between the women though, because obviously this, I don't know if she knew about this other woman or not. Do they kind of get, do they go into conflict, and then how do they resolve that in between themselves, not only in between the men?
Like all other women would.
Okay, but do they also do like...
They fight.
They fight.
Yeah.
They can fight.
Sing in that way as they do with the men, or is it a different dynamic? I was just wondering.
Amongst women.
Yeah.
Usually there is a very, very strong coalition amongst women. And women don't go against women, but human characters all over the world are the same. So you have got also all sorts of, bitter people and greedy people and envious people, happy-go-lucky people, and a conflict, of course, happens. And women will also shout at each other, and usually this is done again in a held context. So, say I feel you've made eyes at my husband. I might do a mosambo in the morning. Mosambo is public speaking, so I will get up really early in the morning and I run across the camp and I will just tell everybody about what you do. I don't come and tell you blah blah blah, but obviously there will be feeling. It's a feeling. It's a conflict, and I express. Benjele express that. And they will express it in no uncertain terms. They will just tell everybody about it because we are collective. And then there will be comments out of sleepy hearts. Well, leave it alone. Go back to bed. Don't make so much noise. Just shut her up. Or others saying, yeah, sometimes she's like that. It's collective. It's out in the open. Nothing can be hidden. Once a Benjele said, because I said, don't yet tell anyone. For whatever reason, did I say I will share tomorrow we'll share some salt or something, but don't. He said you can't ever hide you can't tell a Benjele to hide something from other Benjele. If one Benjele knows, all Benjele know, and this is so. It's held by the community. Same like mourning. When if a woman loses her husband, she might, she will scream and roll on the floor and cry, and it is allowed. It's only should that become dangerous for whatever reason, and she feels, people might feel suicidal and grab a knife in total frenzy. That is when people will interfere, only for the continuation of life. That's the only time that there is an interference and stopping something. Otherwise, everything is allowed and shared, but collectively, and not usually, so much one-to-one. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and do they have, so you said they have like husbands, and so do they don't collectively
I object
share?
to that term myself.
Too?
Well, I object to the term husband and wife when there's no weddings and contracts and things. We don't have a better word, but I feel it when
they're monogamous rather than they don't share each other, like kind of?
No, not
one woman, one penis, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Not
one
really
woman, one penis, and they call each other not husband, wife, but muito. Muito means woman.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
This
you
is-
can't
and-
change your
We
husband.
translate that to wife, and I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's quite dangerous because it gives the impression that everywhere in the world, including hunter-gatherers, you have weddings, all that stuff, and contracts, and a woman belongs to a man or whatever. But it's better to use the word woman.
Well, if a boy and a girl fall in love, that we experience in one camp, I just heard a Musambo of a mother walking in camp and shouting and saying, my daughter's too young and this is not good, and what am I to do, and wailing, and well, what had happened, when a boy and a girl fall in love, they will create a hut. It's very quickly constructed and cover it in lovely ngongo leaves, and then they sleep in it together.
Can they also decide then one day not to be together anymore?
Yes.
And go with other people as well?
Yes, they can decide to go apart.
It's like us lot, where we
Yes.
don't agree with marriage. I mean, we just, form lovely relationships and they last as long as they last. But why on earth would you get the state involved in a wedding and a marriage? I mean, what on earth? I've never understood what the point of it all is, but I know there are tax advantages apparently. But I was going to ask Morna a little bit more about. You didn't mention it quite in this talk, but in your article in the Radical Anthropology Journal, you refer to communism in sort of traditional way, primitive communism, but you've always codified it. You call it communism in motion. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that, because it might be interesting to people here what you meant by communism in motion.
Well, it's that same thing that we've been talking about, isn't it? It's how it's not just about sharing in a fixed sense. It's about the movement, the motion created by sharing, and it's important because traditional understandings of communism, to me, are kind of fixed. They've already kind of gone up into that brain area in some ways. This communism in motion, it's kinetic, it's visceral, and it's constantly moving through people's bodies and through dance and through song and through circulation of power in the community. So it's like the original communism, really. And just it's the politics of Eros was really another way of saying communism in motion, I think.
Any more questions or queries? I will say one thing, which is that all the time in the back of my mind somewhere, I'm hearing voices from today, and they're saying, "Oh, this is all sexual stereotyping. You've got masculine, feminine. You've got this rigid gender identities and models." Nowadays, all progressive people have got beyond all this. We're not binary any longer with gender. We mix up our genders. We don't care about this female roles here, male roles over there. So all this stuff, from that standpoint, is all a bit reactionary. And I want some answers, because I'm always looking for answers, because I get this thrown at me the whole time. I don't know whether Morna wants to answer, or I was sort of addressing my question to you, Morna.
Okay. I've just, my brain has gone to sleep since this morning.
I think that's very easy, Chris. I mean, the modern discussions on gender and the supposed dissolution of traditional binaries is a way of adapting the ultimate flexible human for neoliberal capitalism. It's nothing to do with releasing the capacities, human capacities, including the motility of gender. Nothing to do with that at all.
I stand corrected.
And it's also neatly avoids the question of childcare and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It goes away from the subject, just completely ignores it, so you don't enter into that contradiction.
Yeah. I think
so it's a neat way of sidestepping everything, that you all three of you talked about.
Yeah.
It's just that my granddaughter very really has announced that she doesn't want to be referred to as he or she, and she wants to wear clothes which don't make a distinction between girl and boy. And apparently it's all the rage. I mean, I knew it was all the rage, but it's kind of it's all the rage.
Yeah, but there's a lot of sophistication in
hunter-gatherer gender and gender practice, even in what we've been just talking about, because there's, on the one hand, both this kind of, you mentioned the cutting and the tying, opposite metaphors is so important. And so on the one hand, there's this the men kind of being tied into the women and becoming, in some sense, feminized. But on the other hand, there's also this cutting where women are doing ngoku, then men are going to do sho, and they're going to be so masculine and really show it. And that men can be pregnant, but on the other hand, their hunting and killing a game animal is like pregnancy. So there's this oppositions and these coming together. And then, good.
No, that's just what whenever you said, all this stereotyping and male and female, I was thinking exactly that it's so much more sophisticated than that. We're talking about a sophisticated political and moral economy. That's what I would like to bring out more, almost moving away from the debate about, is it for women, men, gender stereotyping, and bring it out into political, moral, social, communitarian concerns, and oriented all the time, because this is what takes it away from men and women being fixed categories, is that constant cutting and tying back and forth, slippery to and fro, at the centre of which are children. The brilliance of the system is that it's containing the children in a way that allows them to thrive, I think. And when you look at the kinds of systems we are now living in, everything about them is to do with not containing the kids, not protecting the kids, not putting their needs first. People try individually and sometimes in little communities to do that, but I'm talking about the big public corporate capitalist hierarchical machine that prioritizes everything except children, really.
Or let's say it parasitizes on the fact that parents and the atomized kind of families will prioritise children enormously within their own little spaces. And then on top of that is the hierarchy of the capitalist, very much male dominated, where children are just pushed into the edges where they're going to be looked after by their own in a private way. So it's parasitising on that for reproduction of society, and that will reproduce all this fixity of gender that people are rebelling against. People are rightly rebelling against. I'm not quite sure I feel so dismissive about the non-binary challenge as Robin would, because I see it relating to what other hunter-gatherers are talking about with first creation, that you re-enter, that you work and work and work to re-enter first creation together, where everything becomes possible. This is the place in which healing becomes possible, because everything can be shaken up, because you're restoring the corporate morality. And part of that transformation is that you can experience the other sex, you can become the other sex. So
it's like Bakhtin says, you're not talking about the private individual body, you're talking about the great generic body of the people, and that's all the people.
Which has
so
all of it.
It's going way beyond binary sex and into a far more empowering way of being the body.
I'm deeply reassured. Thank you. We've got about 2 minutes. If we're going to stop at 8:30, which is our usual time to stop. I mean, we could go on, but I normally would like to stop and go to the pub. Has anyone got any more comments? Yes.
I noticed that you said you don't think we should describe this society as a simple. It takes a lot of work by everyone to keep what you're describing going. So does that, by implication, does that mean in a kind of modern European society, we don't have to work so hard? Is that right, by contrast?
I don't think we do. I think we work very hard in another way. I think we work very hard at staying here, you know, living our lives in this dissociated state takes a huge amount of energy. And that energy, like you said, is being fed directly into all the parasitical bodies and forces that are thriving on it. You know, but I think we're not working hard in the way that they are. Because, you know, whenever you first look at the literature on the healing dance, I remember people away years ago when I decided to study hunter-gatherers saying, oh, you know, all they do is lie around eating, you know, mongongo nuts and dancing. That's, you know, what's to study? It's such an easy life. But actually, it reminded me, because I read this book a long time ago, coming back to it, I thought this is just incredible effort and work going on constantly, every day in and day out. You're working with your whole self to kind of make your energy available to other people, to tap into the collective, to make sure that things are staying equal. Women are working constantly. This is like, it's like any real revolutionary activity. It can't happen once. It has to be constant. It has to be reiterated again and again and again and again, and that's what's happening. So that's the work. And then, you know, in some ways we're very inert. You know, we've learned to be obedient. We've learned to be passive, because that's what's being inculcated from the very earliest moments. If you think about cots and dummies and prams and you know, all the ways that babies are closed off, they're physically closed off. And there's that then later when it moves into discipline, the sense of being obedient and obeying the authority, which becomes later the social authority. And Hobbes really brought that out. Everyone loves, you know, this idea. Well, not everyone, but you know, it's a loved idea, the social contract. We all come together and agree to obey the ruler. We put our faith in him, and he'll protect us. That's that really is the obedience thing. And I think here you're saying what can happen when humans are not being obedient, when power is located in the body and lived in that way. And it seems to me like it's not at all lying around eating mongongo nuts. You know, it's daily labour.
Can we just remind ourselves that there's more than one contract here. I mean, you're right to start the Hobbes.
Yeah.
You obey the sovereign.
Yeah.
Then there's also Locke. The sovereign is part of the contract.
Of course, yeah.
And then you go to Rousseau.
Yeah.
Which is all the
Rousseau's, yeah.
Rousseau says, C.L.R. James says, Rousseau says, the contract is between us. Mm-hmm. It's getting more democratic.
Yeah. Those were the later refinements of it, yes. But I think because, you know, people like Steven Pinker, you know, put great faith in things starting with, you know, that Hobbes notion of the Hobbesian notion. So I know, of course, it was refined and argued, but still it has informed a lot of our political philosophy.
Okay, I'm suggesting we stop in about 3 or 4 minutes, but Mark, you had a question or a contribution.
I mean, anything that's that natural to what it is to be human, this sort of visceral body associated joy and these things which are so repressed in our society, has to come out somewhere. And I'm thinking, what is it in our society which comes out with this collective expression of enthusiasm, but also tied very much with the body? And the nearest thing apart from football I can think of is actually war. I mean, that sense in which when countries go to war, although it's very different from, you know, the kind of carnivals and rituals you're talking about, and in some ways there's a kind of similarity. It certainly involves bodies and people fighting, and there is this passion for war, no matter how horrible it is, certainly among young men, but actually in the wider society there's almost like people want to have that viscerality to actually, you know, fighting with something with their bodies and being important in the world. And I don't know, there's something about, and I kind of think this is one of the reasons revolutions always go wrong, is because they get misdirected into that. And I don't know what answer there is to all that, but I suppose the only answer is if we
Sex
do
war.
ever try to make a revolution in the future, we have to avoid war, and we have to go towards ritual and carnival and
sex
all this
war.
sexy stuff.
Sexual.
I mean, so in some ways it's a bit.
Matriarch.
I mean, as all you anthropologists are lining up there, you know, I've been agonising, like some of us here, over why revolutions failed in the past and how we can make them succeed in the future. And although I don't think any of us have got the answers, I think you're beginning to come up with some clues about our distant past, which give us some clues about how we can get things right the next time, because we do have to build a different society somehow. And no offence to the Cuban Revolution or the Rock Revolution, as Chris says, they all failed. We need to find something else, and this is a clue, a communism that works, you know, unlike the other communism.
Yeah.
I think the collective body happens every weekend, everywhere in London, and that is when women come together and party and dance.
Party and dance, yeah.
I mean, we have it on larger scales only when we have the big carnivals, Notting Hill Carnival, and if we could make this bigger, then I guess we would, because that is rather than this sort of, you know, aggressive male potential that is the dopamine need, greed, and that has nothing to do with oxytocin and trust that we are talking about here. And that is really coming out when men and women come together and party. If we could enlarge that, then we have a revolution.
Maybe not bigger, but more open. Maybe if you think about the open body, then it needs to be more open, because it's all corporate. You know, these days, if you want to go to a festival, you have to pay. It's not very open, the party.
How many people here have experienced Liverpool on a Friday night? I mean,
Newcastle.
Great armies of women, wave after wave after wave,
short
wall past kids with the shortest possible
war
skirts,
paint,
war paint, all the just going for the lads, let's go and get them.
Seriously scary. Yes, I was going to say that, especially if you are, you know, let's say an Asian or something like that. So I think, if I may say
girls always
so,
win that one because there's so much more solidarity.
If I may say so, right, I think the hunter-gatherers are not alienated from anything, not from sex, not from labor, not from sharing, not, you know, all kind of thing. We are really alienated from just about everything, you know, you can think of. And that's about, you know, solidarity in football, I'd say, a lot to do, you know, with the sort of imperialistic past, you know, jingoism and what have you, openly racist sort of behavior, yeah. That's not the kind of collective I have in mind, yeah. But on the other hand, you know, in the modern world, you know, okay, revolutions have gone wrong, but you really got to defend your rights, you know. There comes a time when you have practiced, let's say, non-violence for a very long time. Some communities have practiced it for thousands of years, and it's never worked for them, you know, because it's a class issue, you know, at the end of the day. I'm coming from, let's say, you know, sort of so-called low class in India, right? It would be futile for me to go and preach to them, hey, look, you've got to adopt Gandhian tactics, you know. They've been doing that for a hell of a long time. Yes, revolution do go wrong. I don't have the solution, but all I'll say is, you know, that yes, you're right in the sense that, you know, hunter-gatherers are not alienated, you know, in the sort of Marxist sense. They are whole. They are actually whole human beings, whereas we've lost it a long time ago. Actually, in my own community, we lost it. I had actually seen it being lost. You know, I was brought up in the old school, share everything. You know, do things for everybody, right? If you got too much, right, you are no good. That's what I was brought up. But I'm finding that in my old days, that is no longer there, because that has gone. That culture of sharing, taking care of people has gone. It is now every man and woman for themselves. And the length that people will go to screw things out of you is just horrendous. So I really sympathize, you know, with the traditional hunter-gatherer societies.
All right, we're going to sort of start on this morning. Have we got a last word?
I don't know. I've probably said enough, really. But
sorry,
I've said enough, I think. But I feel like unless so much more becomes passionate, in the sense that we feel it passionately, You know, like I talked about morality being painful and empowering. This kind of morality is sensed, it's felt, it's in the gut, it's in your lungs, it's in your stomach, it hurts. But actually, we all experience that. It's just that we don't have a language for it anymore. And so, you know, when you look at a lot of the writing, a lot of the academic work, a lot of the great ethnography that's around, so much of it has been bled of that passionate quality. And it seems like, you know, just bringing the caring that's there naturally, bringing that evolutionary imperative to care for one another and to touch one another. You know, most people are terrified to do that. You know, you would start touching, it's like a ripple effect, and you start to bring in this passionate sense of, you know, we're defending ourselves, we're defending our children, we're defending our communities, our families. And as an academic, it's all right to say that. You know, having done my PhD at the University of Edinburgh, it would have been very frowned upon to bring in any political slant. You present your argument and it's really theoretical and really analytical and sophisticated, but you know, you don't tend to make too much of a political commentary on it. And I think that unless you start breaking through that in academia, which is where a lot of great thinking and great information is pooled, it has to be going out. It has to be, you know, injected with blood. It has to be passionate, and it has to be take on another quality. Because really, what we're talking about is the survival of the species. I mean, it's not. You know, 40 years ago, you might have said this and said, well, you know, who knows what will happen? It might all get better. But we're talking about the survival now of our kids. I have children. So, you know, I'm not sitting on the fence anymore. I feel like we really have to start arguing this strongly. Bring in the passion.
I agree.
Bring in the fact that I care about this.
Yeah.
And then you start to change the feeling, you know, of what's possible, what can we say, what can we bring out into the public culture, what parts of the body are lost from the public culture, the female, the reproductive, the sensual, the tactile. And people are incredibly ingenious in thinking about ways of, you know, when we think together of how you could start to reintroduce that to the public culture. But first you need to not, it feels like there's a lot of withholding of that personal passion and the ability to be hurt by what's happening around us.
Well said, Morna.
Thank you.